Wait, I'll take it off, the black woman whispered as the grizzled rancher froze at what lay beneath her torn shawl, the dying sun casting long shadows across the Colorado plains. The townspeople of Dusty Ridge had already condemned her, a fugitive thief who dared strike the mayor's son. They whispered she'd hang or die in the wilderness like so many before her. But the mountain man who found her bleeding at his fence carried ghosts of his own, haunted by a sister he'd failed to save from powerful men years ago. Now this trembling woman clutched something that could destroy the very foundations of their corrupt town, if she lived long enough to reveal it. The rancher's choice would either damn them both or ignite a reckoning that would shake the territory itself. Would he turn away like before? Or finally find the courage to stand against injustice? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The sun hung low over the Colorado Territory as Mercy Washington stumbled across the barren plains. Her legs trembled with each step. Blood had dried on her torn dress. 3 days of running had left her hollow-eyed and desperate. Bear McAllister's ranch appeared like a mirage through the heat waves. The weathered fence posts marked the boundary of civilization. Mercy collapsed against the wooden rails. Her fingers clawed at the dry earth. Bear emerged from his cabin at the sound. The grizzled rancher moved with caution. At 52, he had learned to read trouble from a distance. This woman spelled danger in every bruise that marked her dark skin. He knelt beside her crumpled form. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Bear lifted her carefully and carried her inside. The cabin smelled of leather and tobacco. Mercy's eyes fluttered open as he set her on his worn sofa. "You're safe," Bear said. Mercy pulled back. Trust had been beaten out of her 3 days ago. Bear filled a basin with water. He tore clean cloth into strips. The woman watched his every movement like a cornered animal. When he reached toward her face, she flinched. "I won't hurt you," he said. The words felt hollow. Bear remembered speaking them to his sister 15 years ago. Those same powerful men had silenced her forever. Hoofbeats thundered outside. Bear's jaw tightened. He recognized the sound of Sheriff Wade Hartwell's horse. The lawman never rode alone when hunting. "Stay quiet," Bear whispered. Wade burst through the door without knocking. 5 men followed him inside. Their boots tracked mud across Bear's clean floor. The sheriff's badge caught the lamplight. "Evening, Bear." Wade's eyes found Mercy immediately. "We're looking for a woman. Robbed Peterson's general store. Beat up the mayor's boy when he tried to stop her." Bear glanced at Mercy. She had pressed herself into the corner of the sofa. Her silence spoke louder than any denial. "She attacked young Clayton with a rock," Wade continued. "Took $30 from the register. Peterson wants his money back." The men spread out through the small cabin. They searched Bear's belongings with rough hands. Mercy never moved. She never spoke. Her dark eyes held secrets that could burn down empires. "You harboring a criminal, Bear?" Wade asked. Bear studied Mercy's face. The bruises told a different story than Wade's words. Her torn dress suggested violence that went beyond any store robbery. But speaking up meant war with the Hartwell family. "Found her by my fence," Bear said finally. "Don't know nothing about any robbery." Wade stepped closer to Mercy. She shrank back but held his gaze. The sheriff saw defiance where he expected submission. "You coming with us, girl?" Wade said. "Mayor wants to ask you some questions." Bear's hands clenched into fists. His sister's screams echoed in his memory. The same men, the same threats, the same powerless feeling that had haunted him for 15 years. "She can barely stand," Bear said. "She was strong enough to crack Clayton's skull," Wade replied. "She'll make it to town." Bear watched them drag Mercy toward the door. Her legs buckled twice before they reached the threshold. She never cried out. She never begged. The strength in her silence reminded him of someone he had failed to save. The riders disappeared into the gathering darkness. Bear stood alone in his cabin. The blood-stained cloth lay on his table. The basin of red water reflected his shame. 3 hours passed before she returned. Bear heard the soft footsteps on his porch. He opened the door to find Mercy swaying in the moonlight. Blood ran fresh from her nose. Her dress hung in tatters. "They let you go?" Bear asked. Mercy collapsed against his doorframe. Her breathing came in ragged gasps. Whatever had happened in town had drained her last reserves of strength. Bear caught her before she hit the ground. He carried her inside again. This time, she didn't resist his touch. Pain had burned away her caution. "Please," she whispered. The single word carried the weight of desperate hope. Bear had heard it before. His sister had whispered the same plea as those men dragged her away. He had been too weak to answer her call. Bear set Mercy on his bed this time. He brought fresh water and clean bandages. Her injuries looked worse in the lamplight. Someone had used their fists with precision and cruelty. "They'll come back," Bear said. Mercy nodded. She understood the rules of this game better than most. Men like the Hartwells never stopped hunting until they found satisfaction. "Can't stay here," Bear continued. "Too dangerous for both of us." Mercy struggled to sit up. Her hands moved to something beneath her torn shawl. Her fingers worked at hidden knots in the fabric. "Wait," she said. Her voice carried new strength. "I'll take it off." Bear froze as her hands revealed what lay hidden beneath the blood-stained cloth. A leather money belt circled her waist. Official papers wrapped in oilcloth peeked from its folds. Gold coins caught the firelight through tears in the leather. This was no store robber. This was something else entirely. Something that would change everything he thought he knew about power in Dusty Ridge. Mercy's fingers worked the leather buckles with practiced ease. The money belt fell away from her waist. Gold coins spilled across Bear's rough wooden table. $20 pieces caught the lamplight like fallen stars. Bear counted silently. $2,000 lay before him, more money than most men saw in 5 years. His weathered hands trembled as he reached for the oilcloth bundle. "Don't touch those yet," Mercy said. Her voice had changed. The desperate fugitive was gone. In her place sat a woman with steel in her spine. Bear pulled his hand back. He studied her face in the flickering light. The bruises couldn't hide the intelligence in her dark eyes. This was no common thief. Mercy unwrapped the papers with reverence. Her fingers smoothed out creases that spoke of careful hiding. The first document bore an official seal. Bear recognized territorial letterhead even in the dim light. "Samuel Blackwood's will," Mercy said. "My father's will." Bear's blood turned to ice. Samuel Blackwood had owned half of Dusty Ridge before his death 2 years ago. The richest man in 3 counties. The papers in Mercy's hands changed everything. "He was white," Bear said. "And I'm his daughter." Mercy's chin lifted with pride that no beating could break. "Legitimate daughter, acknowledged in writing before God and witnesses." Bear sank into his chair. The implications crashed over him like an avalanche. If these papers were real, Mercy Washington owned property worth $50,000. She owned the land beneath the mayor's office. She owned the lots where half the town's businesses stood. "The Hartwells have been collecting rent," Bear said. "On my land, for 2 years. Mercy's voice carried quiet fury. "Every dollar they've taken belongs to me." Bear reached for the will with new respect. His eyes scanned the careful script. Samuel Blackwood's signature matched documents Bear had seen in his days as a territorial investigator. The witnesses' names were familiar. Respected men who wouldn't forge such papers. "How?" Bear asked. Mercy's story poured out in careful sentences. Samuel Blackwood had loved her mother. He'd sent Mercy east for schooling. He'd provided for them both while keeping their relationship secret. His final gift was legal recognition and half his fortune. "I came to claim what's mine," Mercy said. Mayor Hartwell's sons were waiting. The attack made sense now. Clayton and his brother had tried to destroy the will. They'd beaten Mercy to force her signature on documents signing away her inheritance. They'd failed on both counts. "They think the will is destroyed," Bear said. "Let them think it." Mercy rewrapped the papers with care. "But I need time to plan." Bear studied the woman before him. 3 hours ago, she'd been a broken fugitive. Now she sat planning strategy like a general before battle. Her father's blood showed in more than legal documents. "You know law," Bear observed. "Eastern Finishing School teaches more than manners." Mercy's smile held no warmth. I know contracts. I know property rights. I know exactly what those men stole from me. Bear felt something shift inside his chest. For 15 years he'd carried guilt over his sister's death. Martha had owned a small farm before the powerful men came. They'd wanted her land for railroad access. When she refused to sell, they'd taken it anyway. My sister fought men like the Hartwells, Bear said. They killed her for a 100-acre farm. How much land did she really own? Mercy asked. The question struck Bear like lightning. He'd never investigated Martha's death properly. He'd been too consumed with grief to ask the right questions, too afraid of the powerful men who'd warned him to stay quiet. I don't know, Bear admitted. Then you don't know what they really killed her for. Mercy leaned forward. Men like the Hartwells don't murder over small farms. They murder over fortunes. Bear's mind raced through memories he'd buried. Martha's mysterious letters in her final months. Her talk of important papers hidden in the house that burned the night she died. You think she had something bigger, Bear said. I think powerful men don't kill unless the stakes are worth killing for. Mercy's eyes held compassion beneath their steel. Help me reclaim what's mine. Maybe we'll find answers about what was yours. Bear stared at the gold coins scattered across his table. This woman offered him something more valuable than money. She offered him a chance at redemption, a chance to finally fight back against the men who'd destroyed his family. What do you need? Bear asked. Proof that can't be destroyed. Mercy began counting coins with steady fingers. Witnesses who will testify in territorial court. Evidence of every crime they've committed since my father died. Bear nodded slowly. His years as an investigator hadn't prepared him for anything this dangerous. The Hartwells would kill them both before allowing such evidence to surface. But Martha's ghost demanded justice. Mercy's courage shamed his 15 years of cowardice. There's a woman in town, Bear said. Elena Vasquez. She keeps records for half the businesses. Sees everything that happens. Will she help us? If she believes you're telling the truth. Bear gestured at the will. Those papers will convince her. Mercy secured the money belt around her waist again. The gold disappeared beneath her torn dress. The transformation back to hunted fugitive happened in seconds. Tomorrow, she said, we start taking back what's mine. Bear watched her settle onto his bed with newfound respect. This woman would either free them all or get them killed trying. Either outcome beat living with ghosts for another 15 years. Dawn broke gray over Dusty Ridge as Bear and Mercy made their way toward town. They traveled separate paths to avoid suspicion. Bear took the main road while Mercy circled through the scrub brush behind Elena Vasquez's dress shop. Elena's fingers flew across her sewing machine when Mercy slipped through the back door. The Mexican-American seamstress looked up without surprise. Her dark eyes held the wisdom of someone who survived by watching and listening. You're the woman they're hunting, Elena said. Mercy nodded. She pulled the will from its hiding place and set it on Elena's cutting table. The official seal caught morning light streaming through dusty windows. Elena's hands stilled on her fabric. She read the document twice before speaking. Her voice came in a whisper, heavy with understanding. Dios mío, you own half this town. I need witnesses, Mercy said. People who saw my father write this will. Elena stood and walked to a wooden chest in the corner. She lifted the lid and withdrew a leather portfolio. Her movements carried the weight of long-held secrets. I was there, Elena said. In his study, the night he signed it. He paid me to witness the document along with Dr. Morrison. Elena opened her portfolio to reveal pages of meticulous notes, dates, names, financial transactions. She'd been documenting the Hartwell family's activities for 3 years. Why? Mercy asked. Because someone needed to keep track. Elena's voice hardened. They've stolen from everyone. My husband's bakery, the Johnson farm, the native families who trusted their treaty promises. Bear appeared at the back door as Elena spread her records across the table. The three of them huddled over evidence that painted a picture of systematic theft spanning years. The mayor had been embezzling federal money meant for Native American treaty payments. He'd falsified land records to sell the same properties multiple times. He'd collected rent on Mercy's inherited land while claiming ownership through forged documents. "How much?" Bear asked. Elena's finger traced columns of figures. $200,000, maybe more. Bear whistled low. The sum represented more money than the entire territorial government handled in a year. No wonder the Hartwells were willing to kill to protect their secret. "Federal marshals investigate missing treaty funds," Elena continued. "They've been asking questions in Denver. Someone told them to look at Dusty Ridge specifically." Mercy and Bear exchanged glances. If federal authorities were already suspicious, the Hartwells were desperate. Desperate men made dangerous choices. "We need proof they can't destroy," Mercy said. Elena smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. She led them to a loose floorboard beneath her sewing table. Hidden compartments revealed copies of every document she'd mentioned. "I've been waiting for someone brave enough to use these," Elena said. Bear examined the papers with his investigator's eye. Elena had documented everything with meticulous care: forged deeds, altered bank records, witness statements from victims too afraid to speak publicly. "Your sister's name is here," Elena told Bear. Bear's hands trembled as he found Martha's file. Elena had recorded details about his sister's death that he'd never known. Martha hadn't owned just a small farm. She'd inherited mineral rights to land worth $20,000, the same land where the railroad now ran. "They killed her for silver," Bear said. "And they'll kill us for much more," Mercy replied. The weight of their situation settled over the small room. They held evidence that could destroy the most powerful family in the territory. But getting that evidence to federal authorities alive would require careful planning. "Dr. Morrison," Elena said suddenly. "He's the other witness to your father's will, but he left town 6 months ago. Said he received threats." "Where did he go?" Mercy asked. "Denver. He's working at the territorial hospital there." Elena's eyes lit with hope. "He could testify about your father's intentions, confirm the will's authenticity." Bear began pacing Elena's small shop. His mind worked through possibilities and dangers. The federal marshals needed to hear from Dr. Morrison before the Hartwells could silence him permanently. "Someone has to reach Denver," Bear said. "Get Morrison's statement to the marshals directly." "I'll go," Mercy said immediately. "Too dangerous. They're watching every road out of town." Bear stopped pacing. "But I know these mountains. I can get through without being seen." Elena shook her head. "They know you're helping her now. Sheriff Wade has men watching your ranch." The three of them fell silent. Every option carried deadly risks. But staying in Dusty Ridge meant certain death once the Hartwells decided to stop playing games. "There's another way," Elena said slowly. "My cousin runs supplies to the mining camps. He could get word to Denver without anyone suspecting." Bear nodded. Mountain supply runs happened weekly. No one questioned wagons heading into the high country. Elena's cousin could carry messages to Dr. Morrison and federal authorities without raising alarm. "How long?" Mercy asked. 5 days minimum, maybe 7 if the weather turns bad." Mercy calculated silently. 7 days meant staying hidden while the Hartwells tore the territory apart looking for her. 7 days of avoiding Sheriff Wade's patrols and hired guns. "We'll need a better hiding place," Bear said. Elena smiled again. "I know just the spot." She led them to a trap door hidden beneath her fabric storage. The underground room had been carved from solid rock by previous owners. It connected to natural caves that stretched for miles beneath the town. "My husband dug this during the Indian troubles," Elena explained. "Connected it to the cave system for emergency escape. The hiding place offered everything they needed. Fresh air from the caves. Multiple escape routes. Storage space for Elena's documented evidence. Most importantly, it lay directly beneath the center of town where no one would think to look. Bear examined the cave entrances with professional interest. His years tracking criminals through mountain wilderness had taught him to read terrain. These passages offered dozens of hidden exits miles from Dusty Ridge. "Perfect," he said. Mercy secured her father's will in Elena's portfolio with the other documents. The three of them had forged an alliance that could topple the Hartwell empire. But success would require patience, courage, and more luck than any of them had ever possessed. "Tomorrow we send word to Denver," Elena said. "Then we wait." 3 days passed in the underground chamber before Elena's cousin returned from Denver with devastating news. Dr. Morrison was dead, found in his hotel room with no signs of struggle. The territorial hospital called it a heart attack. Bear crumpled the written message in his fist. The Hartwells' reach extended far beyond Dusty Ridge. They'd silenced the only witness who could verify Mercy's inheritance in federal court. "We still have the will," Mercy said from her corner of the hidden room. "Paper without witnesses," Bear replied. "Any judge will question its authenticity now." Elena climbed down through the trapdoor carrying food and worse news. Sheriff Wade had torn apart Bear's ranch looking for evidence. The Hartwell brothers had posted a $500 bounty for Mercy's capture. "There's more," Elena said quietly. "Federal marshals arrived in town this morning. 2 of them asking questions about missing treaty funds." Bear felt his pulse quicken. Federal intervention represented their only hope now. But approaching marshals meant exposing themselves to Wade's patrols and Hartwell gunmen. "Where are they staying?" Bear asked. "Mayor's office. Clayton Hartwell is hosting them personally." Elena's voice carried bitter irony. "Showing them hospitality while hiding his crimes." Mercy stood and began pacing the small chamber. Her mind worked through possibilities that grew more desperate by the hour. Without Dr. Morrison's testimony, proving her identity became nearly impossible. "We need those marshals to see Elena's records," Mercy said. "All the documented evidence of embezzlement and fraud." "How?" Bear asked. "Wade has men watching every approach to the mayor's office." Elena pulled a folded paper from her dress pocket. She'd been listening at her shop's front window when the marshals questioned townspeople about missing federal funds. "They're investigating specific payments," Elena said. "Treaty money that never reached the reservation. The amounts match what I documented in Clayton's private ledgers." Bear studied Elena's notes about the marshals' questions. Marshal Thompson and Marshal Rodriguez were following a paper trail that led directly to Dusty Ridge. Someone in Denver had provided them with inside information about the Hartwell operations. "They already suspect," Bear realized. "They're here to gather evidence, not conduct a general investigation." The revelation changed everything. The marshals weren't innocent visitors being fooled by Hartwell hospitality. They were experienced investigators building a federal case against corruption. "We need to get Elena's records to them," Mercy said. "Tonight." Bear shook his head. "Too dangerous. Wade has the mayor's office surrounded with armed men." "Then we bring the marshals to us," Elena said. She outlined a plan that relied on her network of Mexican-American families throughout the town. Word could be passed quietly from shop to shop until it reached someone with legitimate business at the mayor's office. "Maria Santos cleans the mayor's office every evening," Elena explained. She could pass a message to the marshals without arousing suspicion. The plan carried enormous risk. If Wade intercepted the message, all 3 of them would face immediate execution. But staying hidden meant watching the marshals leave empty-handed while the Hartwells destroyed remaining evidence. "What message?" Bear asked. Mercy wrote quickly on paper torn from Elena's notebook. She kept the words simple and direct. Evidence of federal fund embezzlement was available. The location would be revealed if the marshals came to Elena's shop alone after dark. Elena read the message twice before nodding approval. She folded it into a small square that could be hidden easily. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared to risk everything on reaching 2 men she'd never met. "If this fails," Elena said. "It won't," Mercy interrupted. "It can't." Elena climbed back through the trapdoor to begin the dangerous chain of communication. Bear and Mercy settled into tents, waiting in their underground sanctuary. Hours passed before Elena returned with Maria Santos's reply. The marshals had received the message. They would come to the dress shop at midnight if they could slip away from their Hartwell escorts. If they could slip away, Bear repeated. That's not a promise. It's the best chance we'll get, Mercy replied. They spent the remaining time organizing Elena's evidence into a presentation that would convince federal investigators. The documented pattern of theft and fraud painted a clear picture of systematic corruption spanning 3 years. At 11:30, they climbed from their hiding place into Elena's darkened shop. Elena positioned herself at the front window to watch for approaching figures. Bear and Mercy arranged the evidence on her cutting table where lamplight would illuminate every detail. Midnight came and passed without visitors. Elena's hands worried at her sewing scissors as she maintained her vigil at the window. Each minute of delay suggested the marshals couldn't escape Hartwell's supervision. At 12:15, soft footsteps approached the shop's back door. Elena hurried to answer the careful knock. 2 men in federal badges entered quietly, their eyes scanning the room for threats. Marshal Thompson appeared older than his partner, with gray threading his dark hair. Marshal Rodriguez moved with the careful alertness of someone accustomed to dangerous work. Both men carried themselves with the authority of federal law. "You have information about missing treaty funds," Thompson said without preamble. Elena gestured toward the table where 3 years of documented evidence waited. The marshals examined her records with growing amazement. Rodriguez whistled softly as he calculated the scope of the theft. "This represents over $200,000 in federal money," Rodriguez said, "plus illegal land sales and forged documents," Bear added. Thompson studied Bear with professional interest. "You're the territorial investigator who worked the northern districts." "Former investigator," Bear corrected. "Good work survives retirement," Thompson replied. He turned to examine Mercy with curious eyes. "And you are?" Mercy stepped forward with her father's will in hand. The moment had come to reveal her true identity to federal authority. Everything depended on these 2 men believing her story and protecting her long enough to testify. "Samuel Blackwood's daughter," Mercy said, "and the rightful owner of half this town." The marshals exchanged glances that spoke of complications beyond their original investigation. They'd come hunting embezzled treaty funds. Instead, they'd discovered an inheritance fraud that touched every aspect of Dusty Ridge's power structure. "This changes everything," Thompson said. Marshal Thompson examined Mercy's inheritance documents under Elena's lamplight. His weathered fingers traced the official seals with expert knowledge. 20 years of federal service had taught him to recognize authentic papers. "This will is genuine," Thompson declared. "But proving your identity without living witnesses will be challenging." Marshal Rodriguez spread Elena's financial records across the cutting table. The documented trail of embezzlement painted a clear picture of systematic fraud. His pen scratched notes as he calculated the federal government's losses. "We need to move fast," Rodriguez said. "If the Hartwells suspect we're building a case, evidence will disappear overnight." Bear positioned himself by the shop's front window to watch for Wade's patrols. The sheriff had increased his rounds since the marshals arrived. Armed men circled the town square every 30 minutes. "Sheriff Wade is Clayton's brother," Bear informed the marshals. "He's been protecting the family's operations for years." Thompson's expression hardened. Corrupt local law enforcement complicated federal investigations. They couldn't trust anyone wearing a badge in Dusty Ridge. "We'll need to arrest them simultaneously," Thompson said, "before they can destroy records or flee the territory." Elena pulled additional documents from her hidden compartments. She documented not just the Hartwells' crimes, but their network of accomplices throughout the region: bank officials, land office clerks, territorial judges. "The corruption runs deeper than you know," Elena said. Rodriguez studied the expanded evidence with growing amazement. What had begun as a simple treaty fund investigation now revealed a criminal enterprise spanning 3 counties. "How many people are involved?" Rodriguez asked. "Dozens," Elena replied. "Maybe more." The scope of the conspiracy overwhelmed their small team. 2 federal marshals couldn't arrest an entire network without local support, but every local official seemed connected to the Hartwell operations. "We need honest men with authority," Thompson said. "I know someone," Bear said quietly. The others turned toward him with hopeful expressions. Bear had remained silent about his suspicions regarding Sheriff Wade, but recent events had clarified the man's true nature. "Wade's been asking questions," Bear continued, "about his brother's activities, private questions that suggest doubt." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "You think he's having second thoughts about protecting his family?" "I think he's scared," Bear replied. "Scared men sometimes choose survival over loyalty." The group fell silent as they considered approaching Sheriff Wade directly. The risk seemed enormous. If Wade remained loyal to his brother, their entire operation would collapse within hours. "It's worth trying," Mercy said finally. "We're running out of options." Elena nodded agreement. She'd observed Wade's behavior during recent weeks. The sheriff avoided eye contact when collecting rent from businesses on Mercy's inherited land. Guilt showed in his reluctance to lead searches for her. "How do we approach him?" Rodriguez asked. "Carefully," Thompson replied, "and with leverage." They spent an hour planning their approach to Sheriff Wade. The marshals would request a private meeting about federal jurisdiction issues. Bear would attend as a local liaison. Mercy and Elena would remain hidden but nearby in case escape became necessary. Dawn approached as they finalized their strategy. The marshals needed to return to their hotel before the Hartwells noticed their absence. Elena began hiding her evidence again while planning the day's careful communications. 6 hours, Thompson said. "We'll approach Wade at noon when his deputies are eating lunch." The marshals slipped away through Elena's back door as first light touched the eastern mountains. Bear and Mercy retreated to their underground chamber to wait through another tense day. Elena reopened her dress shop at normal hours to maintain appearances. Townspeople entered throughout the morning seeking alterations and gossip. She listened to their conversations while her fingers worked automatically at familiar sewing tasks. The talk centered on increased patrols and the federal marshal's presence. Fear had settled over Dusty Ridge like morning fog. Everyone sensed approaching changes, but no one understood their true scope. At 11:30, Elena closed her shop early and descended to the hidden chamber. Bear and Mercy waited with weapons cleaned and escape routes memorized. The next hour would determine whether they lived to see justice or died attempting it. Wade agreed to the meeting, Elena reported. He seemed nervous about talking to federal authorities. "Good," Bear said. "Nervous men tell the truth." They climbed to Elena's main shop and positioned themselves where they could observe the sheriff's office across the street. Thompson and Rodriguez approached the building with casual confidence that disguised their tension. Wade met them at his office door. His movements carried the rigid posture of a man under enormous stress. The three lawmen disappeared inside while Bear watched nearby windows for signs of ambush. 20 minutes passed before the office door reopened. Wade emerged first, his face pale but determined. The marshals followed with expressions that revealed nothing to watching eyes. Thompson glanced toward Elena's shop and nodded slightly. The signal meant success. Sheriff Wade had agreed to help bring down his own brother's criminal empire. "He's with us," Bear whispered to Mercy and Elena. Relief flooded through the hidden chamber as their desperate plan gained legitimate law enforcement support. Wade's cooperation meant access to official records and the authority to make arrests stick in territorial court. "What now?" Mercy asked. "Now we spring the trap," Elena replied. She outlined Wade's plan for gathering his brother and the mayor in one location. A fabricated emergency would summon both men to the sheriff's office where marshals waited with arrest warrants. The endgame approached rapidly. Years of corruption and violence would face federal justice within hours, but the Hartwells wouldn't surrender easily. The final confrontation would test everyone's courage. "Tomorrow morning," Elena said, "Wade sends word that federal marshals are leaving town. Clayton and the mayor will feel safe enough to meet openly. And we'll be waiting," Mercy finished. The morning sun climbed over Dusty Ridge as Sheriff Wade sent word that the federal marshals were packing to leave town. Clayton Hartwell received the message with visible relief. His younger brother James emerged from hiding for the first time in days. Mayor Hartwell called an emergency meeting at the sheriff's office to celebrate their narrow escape from federal investigation. The three brothers gathered in Wade's office while armed guards watched the street outside. Inside the building, Marshals Thompson and Rodriguez waited in the jail cells, hidden from view. Bear crouched behind Wade's desk with handcuffs ready. The trap was set. "Those federal boys found nothing," Clayton said as he entered Wade's office. "Told you we covered our tracks properly." Mayor Hartwell followed with a bottle of whiskey to celebrate. James brought a satchel containing the last of the embezzled treaty funds. They planned to divide the money before hiding it permanently. "Wade, you did good work keeping them away from our business," the mayor said. Wade nodded stiffly. His hands trembled as he poured drinks for his brothers. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Something wrong, brother?" Clayton asked. Before Wade could answer, Thompson and Rodriguez stepped from the jail area with federal badges gleaming. Bear rose from behind the desk with his gun drawn. The Hartwell brothers froze in shocked silence. "Clayton Hartwell, you're under arrest for embezzling federal treaty funds," Thompson announced. "Mayor Hartwell, you're under arrest for conspiracy and fraud," Rodriguez added. James reached for his weapon but found Bear's gun pointed directly at his chest. The younger Hartwell raised his hand slowly as reality crashed over him. "Wade!" Clayton's voice carried betrayal and rage. "You set us up?" "I chose the law over family," Wade replied. "Something I should have done years ago." The marshals moved efficiently to secure their prisoners. Handcuffs clicked around wrists that had signed fraudulent documents and stolen federal money. The satchel of treaty funds became evidence in a federal case. Outside, Elena's network of Mexican-American families had quietly surrounded the sheriff's office. They prevented the Hartwell guards from interfering as federal arrests took place. Justice had found allies throughout the community. Mercy emerged from Elena's shop and walked across the street with her father's will in hand. Townspeople gathered as word spread that the powerful Hartwell family faced federal charges. "I am Mercy Washington," she announced to the crowd, "daughter of Samuel Blackwood and rightful owner of half this town." Gasps rippled through the assembled people. Many recognized her father's name, but none had suspected his secret daughter's existence. The will she displayed bore official seals that couldn't be questioned. "These men stole my inheritance," Mercy continued, gesturing toward the arrested Hartwells. "They collected rent on my land while beating me for claiming what's mine." Elena stepped forward with her documentation of 3 years of systematic theft. Other townspeople began voicing their own grievances against the corrupt family. Stories poured forth of intimidation, false charges, and stolen property. Marshal Thompson raised his hand for silence. He addressed the crowd with federal authority that commanded respect. "These arrests are just the beginning," Thompson announced. "We'll investigate every complaint and prosecute every crime we can prove." The Hartwells were loaded into a prison wagon for transport to Denver. Clayton's defiant stare promised revenge, even as federal handcuffs secured his wrists. The mayor wept openly as his political career crumbled into disgrace. James Hartwell broke completely as the wagon rolled away. He confessed to additional crimes involving forged land deeds and murdered witnesses. His testimony would ensure his brothers faced the gallows alongside him. 6 months later, Dusty Ridge had transformed beyond recognition. Mercy Washington stood on the porch of her father's restored mansion, watching children play in the town square she now owned. Elena Vasquez had been appointed the town's official record keeper, ensuring transparent governance replaced the old corruption. Her meticulous documentation had proven invaluable in recovering stolen property for dozens of families. Bear McAllister served as Mercy's ranch foreman and trusted advisor. His guilt over his sister's death had finally lifted as justice reached the men who'd killed her. Martha's farm had been returned to her memory through a scholarship fund Mercy established. Sheriff Wade Hartwell continued wearing his badge under federal supervision. His cooperation in prosecuting his brothers had earned him a chance at redemption. The community watched him carefully, but acknowledged his courage in choosing justice over family loyalty. The school Mercy built welcomed children of all backgrounds. Mexican American, Native American, and white families sent their children to learn together. Education replaced fear as the foundation of community progress. Mercy's general store had become a gathering place where former enemies conducted honest business. Fair prices and equal treatment attracted customers from neighboring towns. Prosperity followed justice like spring follows winter. Federal investigators had uncovered a corruption network spanning 5 territories. The Hartwell case led to dozens of additional arrests and millions of dollars in recovered stolen funds. Native tribes finally received their promised treaty payments. Dr. Morrison's death had been ruled murder once James Hartwell confessed to arranging the killing. Justice for the doctor came too late to save him, but his memory was honored through the Territorial Hospital's new ethics program. Elena's dress shop had expanded into the largest business on Main Street. Her success proved that honest work and fair dealing could triumph over corruption and intimidation. She employed 12 people from various backgrounds. Bear had married a schoolteacher from Denver who appreciated his gentle nature and tragic past. Their small farmhouse echoed with laughter that replaced 15 years of lonely guilt. Martha's memory lived on in the love he'd found. Mercy stood as the undisputed leader of a transformed community. Her inheritance had been fully restored through federal court action. More importantly, her vision of inclusive prosperity had become reality. The woman who'd once hidden her identity behind a torn shawl now wore fine dresses and held her head high. Samuel Blackwood's daughter had claimed not just her inheritance but her rightful place as a force for justice and progress in the American West.